Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee with Craner. Today I have a special guest Katharen Bortolin from Hospice of Windsor, Essex. She's the the new executive director. It's been 30 days or less?
About just between 1 to 2 months, so we'll say 2 months.
Fresh in the role, but has been with Hospice for 5 years?
Yes.
So congratulations on the new gig.
Thanks, Lyndon. Appreciate it.
And Katharen and I go back to university days and when we were together at WIF, Windsor Essex Film Festival.
We were wearing T-shirts and parking cars. We weren't quite as dressed up, but it was a good time, for sure.
It was. So to give a little bit more of a background of Katharen, she is also a member of the board of directors at Hôtel-Dieu Grace Healthcare, and also a member of the board of directors and secretary for the Windsor Film Festival, and a University of Windsor alumna. She graduated with a Master's of Business and also a Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences. And today we find her here at Hospice. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thanks for coming to join us at Hospice.
We have our Hospice mugs.
We love our coffee here, so it's appropriate.
Okay, good. Aside from Hospice, where do you go for your coffee?
So personally, I spend a lot of time downtown with WIF. So Cafe March 21 would be my favorite, but I have to give a shout out to the Coffee Exchange because it was my first date with my husband, Peter. And I will say, being at Hospice, Vince and Diane Cardella, so Tim Hortons, they donate tons and tons of coffee and baked goods and soups and things. And really what they're donating is memorable moments to our patients and families. The number of little ones that come and what they remember from visiting, grandma or grandpa is the Timbit. I have to say, beyond just the coffee, they have a pretty high impact. So I have to give a shout out to our friends at Tim Hortons because we would not be able to do what we do without them.
Yes. When my grandfather was here, I remember in one of the main lobbies was the cookies.
Yes.
So I had too many. But yeah, no, and tell us, how did you enter this role? What was that journey like after graduating your MBA?
So like many MBA grads, I was super excited to get working and kind of forgot that I'd probably never have a summer vacation again. But that's okay because work has its good things too.
Yes.
So after graduating in the master's program, one of the things I really loved about the MBA, and shout out to Vincent Georgie and the team at Odette for this, but it was so practical and so hands-on. And my partner, who I got to work with the most, was Windsor Regional Hospital. So I knew that I liked healthcare. I'm not clinical, so I'm not a nurse, an RN, a PSW or physician. I leave that to the experts, and I love them for it, and happy to take their advice and their recommendations, and then sit on my side of the world. So with the master's program, I did a lot of work with Windsor Regional, and then I was fortunate enough to be hired at the cancer program. So spent 3 years there, and that was a more operations heavy role. So I managed the clerical staff and worked with the nurses and frontline, and spoke with patients and families a lot too. So it was a lot more frontline, and the cancer program has a bit of a different vibe. You don't know what someone's facing on a particular day. It could be a good news day, it could be a bad news day. But at the end of the day, I will say, working at the hospital, it's always about patients and families, and that's something that, regardless of what I do here, there, or otherwise, I hold really close to my heart. So there was an opportunity. My boss at the time, Colleen Riam, became the executive director here after Carol had been here for a number of years. And she reached out to me and said, I have a position. Are you interested? Would you want to come interview? And I had a bit of experience with palliative care, being at the cancer program, so there's a bit of crossover, but working at Hospice was something that really excited me. So I came into Hospice, and I was more on the fundraising and communication side of the world. And then an opportunity opened up recently for the executive director role. And I was very fortunate that, the board, it was a role that they were interested in, and I was interested in as well. And so it's definitely been a really interesting 5-year journey, going from frontline to doing kind of that fundraising community piece to now having, I've said, I've always been in kind of this hospice fish tank for the past 5 years. I just have a little bit of a wider view now. I've worked with all the staff, but now I'm a bit more on the umbrella side, which has been really fabulous for at least the first 60 days so far.
Yes. What has the first 60 days been like?
The team has been amazing. They always are. I will say, by nature of what we do at Hospice, we attract good people. I mean, there's good people everywhere, but we attract the kindest, most compassionate, wonderful people who are so patient focused. So naturally, they've been good to me too. They've let me ask the dumb questions and tag along with them, whether or not I'm spending, following some of our staff in the hospital just to understand what their day looks like, spending a little bit more time in our residence. Because I had been more on the fundraising communication side of the world, I jumped in a little bit more just to kind of refresh and have a better view of what the frontline side was, and it's been great so far. So to come into an organization that is 45 years old and a pillar of the community, it is a big responsibility. So I want to make sure that I take my time to understand the foundation that's been built and all the people that make it run.
And when did hospice first start?
So hospice started in 1979. So sometimes in Windsor, Essex, we do this thing where we think we don't have nice things, I acknowledge. But when it comes to hospices, we do. Yeah. As far as, in the province, we have a lot of beds comparative to other communities. There's places, in the GTA who are just trying to build their first 10-bed facility.
Yes.
And we have 23 beds across Windsor and Leamington, and a robust in-home program that takes care of about 1,200 patients a year, plus grief and bereavement services and spiritual care and social work. So we have a pretty big hospice, and we're doing pretty well. And, we have been a leader. We've had a lot of people come to see our hospice to then build theirs. So we just want to keep that momentum going.
Yes. And it's a big part of it is donations, I would imagine.
Yes.
And provincial funding or federal funding, whatever is required.
So, and I coming from the hospital, they have their own challenges, no doubt, and obviously sitting on the board of one. But our hospice, we don't receive full government funding. Mm-hmm. So we're about 50% funded by the government. And so there's an element that, yes, I have, a board of directors I report to, but as far as I'm concerned, I report to our community because our community built us. So the fundraising budget for hospice is about $2.1 million a year. And that is to make sure that we can keep caring for patients. The really kind of interesting and cool thing that happens is every time you see, donations to hospice in an obituary or maybe a golf tournament in honor of someone, that's a family and loved ones who want to pay it forward, who are basically saying, my loved one got such good care that I want to make sure the next person has that too. And so that, is in an ideal world, are we fully funded? Of course. But also, if you're going to kind of flip it on its head, the fact that our community appreciates what we do and believes in us so much to help us fundraise, that's really impactful and meaningful too.
So is fundraising a big part of your role as ED?
Yes. I mean, it has to be because, as the face, which it feels a little bit, I had a staff member ask me, she's like, what does it feel like being being the boss? Which and I told her, I'm like, I don't know, I still put my pants on the same way in the morning. So, but there's a responsibility, you have those conversations and you have to look at those opportunities and you make those connections, which, I mean, you even know as a counselor, right? Mm-hmm. Like you never know where something great could come from. So there's so many people in our community who want to back us, making those connections. Saying fundraising really sounds like I'm running around and, begging people for money. Yeah. We're really fortunate here that there's a lot of people that believe in us and are so willing to give and support, and they ask, how can I help? And that's something that all communities have that, but oh my goodness, Windsor and Essex County, Leamington, we have such a giving community. It makes the fundraising a little bit easier.
What would you say, because you mentioned working with the Cancer Center?
Yes.
Yes, during your MBA, and then really falling in love with healthcare on the operations side. What made you fall in love with hospice 5 years ago?
Yeah. So the first thing, so I finished my MBA. I was, you're right out of school. You're like ready to hit the ground running. Yeah. And so Colleen Rhea, my boss at the time, said, I came in and I was like, okay, what kind of education and what can I do? Because like we're all well trained to ask those questions and whatnot, and we mean them, but you want to, you're ready to like add to that resume and build and go. And she said to take, it's a course called Fundamentals of Palliative Care. And I mean, I had just come off of, finance courses and accounting courses and all sorts of things. And so I was like, oh, it's a course, no big deal. And I sat down, and the first thing that is asked of you, and I know we chatted a little bit, that these topics are uncomfortable, and I know that. And for me, like this one hit me like a 2x4 over the head. Like I was, oh my God. The first thing they say is draw your own death. And I spun right out. I was like, I don't know what to draw. I was so literal. I started drawing. I couldn't do it. And there was this really fabulous PSW who had been working in palliative care for a bit. And she drew this like abstract, beautiful I don't even know what it was, but she's like, this is just how I picture it. And this is more the feeling that I want when I pass. And I like went home and was just like, I don't even know what just happened. And so it really, it hit me hard. And that was my first intro. And so then I kept taking the course and I realized this isn't some terrifying abstract thing. This is a part of life. Like this happens. We talk about birth plans and, you know, moms, what music they want playing when they're, why wouldn't we talk about death? It's going to happen. And it's a tough topic, but a little bit of that normalization. You don't have to go in the nitty gritty. You don't have to know every detail, but having those conversations now or earlier makes it easier so that your family and loved ones know, and they're not doing this thing like, I don't know what they want, or we never talked about it. So it started with fundamentals of palliative care. And then, I mean, the natural thing. And I my job at a cocktail party is a little tough because everyone goes, oh, it must be so hard to work there. But we celebrate a lot and we have a lot of fun. And I remember being at the cancer program, and my office was right near the front door. And there is a palliative clinic that operates out of there, fabulous teams. And they were laughing from the palliative so loud. It was a bit intrusive in the middle of the cancer program. So I walked down there and you realize they're sitting with the patient laughing. Yeah. Like this really tough topic can be something that's so important and so impactful. So I slowly kind of got more and more just information about palliative and a little more exposure to it. And I talked to people and it became something I was really passionate about. You know, we want to live so well. Why wouldn't we die well as well? And it just opened my eyes to all the possibilities and all the memorable moments. And sometimes too, you know, especially when you have good palliative care, you know the outcome. So now let's take the time we have and make it as fabulous as it can be. Why wouldn't we make it memorable? And why wouldn't we, you know, give people those moments? Because the other piece of palliative care, which I should, you know, palliative care is a style of care. It's looking at not just the disease, it's looking at the whole person and everybody around that person. Because when the patient passes, we're still caring for family and loved ones. So creating memorable moments for the patient is important, but it's also equally as important for those they leave behind. So I more and more exposure, and then the opportunity came to work here, and then, you know, I was sold on it.
Yes. And now you talked about the experience that you provide those seeking care at this facility. Can you talk about that? What are some things that you do to make it fun? For sure.
That's, like I said, I have the cocktail party job where everyone goes, oh, that must be sad. But like we, you know, so one program that, you know, I'm super proud of, and our recently retired Chief Bruce Crowder was instrumental, and Justin Lammers has been fabulous as well in continuing. So EMS have to flip over their ambulances every 5 years. It's a safety thing, which we want EMS to get where they need to go. I want that vehicle to work, so no problem. It doesn't mean that anything's, you know, really, really wrong with it, but they flip it over for maintenance purposes. So they tend to donate, you know, the ambulances that need to be passed off to, like some will go to St. Clair College to help students learn on, and they were generous enough to donate one to us. So it's called the Genie, granting exceptional and impactful experiences. Memorable rides, last rides, that type of thing. So we're not a locked facility. If someone wants to come and go from hospice, it's not uncommon for me to be walking, you know, we're about a city block wide, for me to be walking through the parking lot and waving at a patient who's, you know, being out for a walk. A lot of people assume if you're at hospice, you're laying in a bed, you're not really talking, or that's not the case. There's a whole range. So sometimes, you know, people want to go do things, but the one barrier is transportation. So EMS was generous enough to donate this vehicle and help us. You know, we knocked a window in there so you can see out and all sorts of things. But the one piece is, even though it's not functioning as an ambulance, it still requires a different a license to drive. So we have the vehicle, we have the patients. EMS was asked if they were willing to volunteer their time to drive, and they had so many yeses that they had to cap it, which was amazing. So, and a lot of, you know, talking to some of our EMS friends, they say, you know, a lot of times we're driving and it's tough moments or hard things. Like, these are happy moments. So, and recently, this is, you know, public, but we had a patient who was a huge birder and wanted to go to Point Pelee one last time. And so one of our team members went, his family went, EMS drove, and, you know, that was his wish. We also have patients who just want to go home one more time. Sometimes they've come straight from the hospital and they're like, I just want to say bye to my house, and they have a right to do that. So those are some of, you know, more intricate. A lady, the Spitfires donated a suite. They were lovely. And we had a lady go into the suite at the Spits game and got to enjoy a hockey game. So those memorable moments are huge, but sometimes the most impactful moments are also the little ones. It's grandma's here and it's a grandson's birthday, so our team runs out and gets a cake. Or we had one lovely lady, and again, all of this stuff is public because I don't want to, patient confidentiality is important, but we had this lovely lady, and it wasn't her birthday, and there wasn't really a holiday coming up, and her name was Betty. So our staff celebrated Betty Day. They decorated and just made a day for her. Awesome. Sometimes it's a patient, really wants a lasagna. So one of our team, or our volunteers will make one. So that team, those memorable moments can look like 1,000 different things. Mm-hmm. And some things, in our day-to-day lives, they're not things that we would consider memorable, but in those moments, they really, really are.
Yes.
We think it has to be some big grandiose thing, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. The little things account for sure. Now, going back a little bit to your role, mm-hmm. What would you say, like, what type of person does it take to be in the executive director role at a hospice?
So the term servant leadership comes to mind because, so we have 120 staff. We have 500 active volunteers. Wow. Many of our volunteers work just as many, if not more hours than our team members. They are unbelievable. I'm one person. They are 620. Yeah. They are the ones interacting with patients and families. They are the ones out in the community. I couldn't be everywhere at once, even if I wanted to. But nonetheless, there has to be a compassionate piece. Humans are messy. We'd love to have all these rules and regulations, and we have them because we have to keep everybody safe, and it is still healthcare. But we're dealing with humans. So a little bit of flexibility, a whole lot of compassion, and I'm still working on this because we're all human and we all have to work on things. Listening skills. I've been trying to spend a lot of time listening to our staff and volunteers because they're the ones, if one, I don't have the best ideas. Mm-hmm. Two, they're the ones spending the most time with patients and families. So they're the ones with the ideas. Yeah. And they're the ones that are going to come up with the solution. So for me, my job is to remove barriers, listen, and help guide them because they're doing the important work. I'm just here to support that. Mm-hmm. Yes, sometimes I think we hear executive director and we think like interview and suit and tie and the formal thing and the talk at the podium. Yeah, but that's not the day-to-day. Those are the moments, those are the pictures you see on Instagram. They are important. I'm happy to do an interview like this, but for me, this is just another opportunity to talk about hospice and to talk about those 620 people and all the patients and families and the community that we serve, because that's the most important thing. And I'm very fortunate, hospice has been built on such a fabulous foundation by so many wonderful EDs. I'm so well supported. So between Carol Derbyshire, who had breakfast with the other day, and Jane Boyd, who's a phone call away, and just, all the people that helped build this, I think they would even say it's, as the ED, yes, we hold the title, but it's not about us. And it never has been and it never will be. Yeah. And so type of leader, you gotta listen and you have to meet people where they're at. It's a tough time, so let's make it memorable. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So 60 days, what do you have planned, or what's in store for hospice that you can share that you're excited about in the coming months and years? So
I think, there's been a lot of conversation in our community about an aging population. And so by nature of that, we just want to take care of more people. Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's a place for funders, there's a place for government, there's a place for everything. So working with, our government, our ministry counterparts to say, we have a need, we are willing to build. Because the thing, even if you came to me tomorrow and said, I have a blank check, do you want to add 3 rooms? I still need the ministry to support that. So trying to work with all those partners to say, yes, there is a need. Yes, we're full. Yes, we have people in our community that believe in us. I think growth will always be something that, is top of mind for us, because we know that we're full. We know that we have wait lists. Nothing breaks our team's heart more than, somebody not getting here when we know that we can provide that memorable care. It also helps our hospital partners. We hear these things about emergers being really full and it being tough. If we can take some burden off them, then it's better for everybody. And it's the right care at the right time, and it just makes more sense. So I think growth in general is something that will definitely be top of mind. But I guess kind of to go back to our last question, being here 60 days, do I have some ideas? Yeah, but I still got a lot of listening to do.
Yes.
And I think that's what I will probably spend the next little bit doing. It's not that I don't have ideas or I don't have thoughts, but I have 620 people in an entire community to lean on to help kind of build what that future looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely growth, and I will say full funding, because that would be the dream. Not that our provincial and federal friends have been very, very good to us. I am not complaining. They've been wonderful and so supportive and really believe in what we do. But if we could ever get to a point that hospice is fully funded for operations and then everything else was a bonus, that would just be such a dream.
Mm-hmm. So there's often a wait list. So building more beds is important.
That would be, and growing our home program too. It's a lot of times people assume, the residence is people's choice and where they'd want to be, but there's a lot of people who want to pass at home, who want their, if you have a big family and a lot of supports, and we can support you to do that, then we're happy to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
And others, that's not their wish at all. So it's nice to have both. But supporting our two residences support about 500 patients a year, but we support about 1,200 in their own home. Like it's quite a big program.
Oh yeah.
And then there's all the family members and loved ones beyond that. So growing either program would be great. We love our physicians and our nurses, our PSWs. So more team members, the more the merrier. And then helping more people, that would be the dream, no doubt.
So with growth, we need community support.
Sure.
Final question for you. How can the community get involved to support hospice? I know you mentioned you have a lot of volunteers. You always need volunteers. But for those that are let's say they're busy and they want to get involved in some way, what would be your advice?
So we always say giving time, treasures, and talents. We will take any of them as a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
And so some volunteers, yes, they work in the kitchen every Thursday and they make meals for patients and families, and that is their regular shift, and that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Other volunteers, and I think you've helped with dove pins too, pop up
Mm-hmm.
at events and
Yep.
help when they can. Others will come in and offer services and say, hey, I had a gentleman say, I own a drywall business. If you need drywall, let me know. It's amazing, the need and the willingness of people to support. So donations always help, of course,
Yep.
but time, treasures, and talents, we
heartedly
heartedly accept all three, because they all make an impact, and
Yes.
and the collective impact. I will say, to hearing from our volunteers, what they get out of being a part of the hospice team is also pretty fabulous. You hear their stories and how proud they are to volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I'm so grateful for their time, but I'm also so happy that they walk away. And there's a reason that we have volunteers that
Mm-hmm.
are here just as often as staff.
Yeah.
That high impact piece is important.
Definitely a rewarding place to work and volunteer. I imagine you go home every day, feeling proud of what you're able to assist with. So this was great. I really enjoyed this conversation. Hospice is very, near and dear to my heart, and I think it's a cause that everyone should support if they can. So be sure to visit their website online, donate, volunteer your time, reach out, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lyndon.
Cool.
It's been great.
Awesome. Catch the full episode on coffeewithcraner.com.